All right. Hey, family. We're back to another episode of the Gero Juice podcast with your host, Adrianne D. Jones. Listen, June is Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month. And if you did not know, there are many individuals and families who are battling Alzheimer's disease or a dementia diagnosis. Well, I'm honored to speak to our guest today who has shared his mother's diagnosis of Alzheimer's and his family's dynamic caregiving journey through one of the most amazing films ever produced, known as the Mama Joe Project, Hope and Help. Welcome, Dr. Herb Caldwell, to the Gero Juice podcast.
Adrian, listen, very excited to be here with you. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to conversation.
Thank you for spending your look. What afternoon is this? It's Wednesday. I'm getting all my days mixed up. Listen, Herb, I had a birthday last week, and I'm just coming back into, my routine, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And I'm still practicing brain health in my own birthday kind of way. So be
Okay.
patient with me today if you
Listen,
can.
this is safe space. Okay. You got it. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, let's jump right in. I want you to just start off by telling us about the Mama Joe Project and what, besides sharing your mother's diagnosis, share your why behind the film.
Okay. So what the Mama Joe Project is, it's our initiative that's combining media with research, with education, with community to connect folks with information and resources, particularly as related to caregiving, brain health, and healthy aging. And there's really four components to the Mama Joe Project. Um, the most, I guess, visual piece is the documentary film, right, which is called My Mama Joe, Hope and Help. And I guess you mentioned, it chronicles our family story and caring for our mother who had an Alzheimer's, actually an early onset Alzheimer's dementia diagnosis. But we really love using the film as part of community outreach, and we call those community engagement forums. And you've been to one of those, right? So we're in a movie theater or an auditorium somewhere. And what I really like about this, it gives us the chance to not only just show the film, but have immediate conversation with experts. In every city we go to, we have some of the most amazing people, in this field to take our questions, right? To give us answers. And then we try to connect them with resources. We have some other pieces one called multimedia modules, which gives us a more agile and flexible way outside of the film, right?
Okay.
The film is only an hour, but some of us don't have attention span to watch a whole hour. So give me a 90-second, social media piece. But that gives us another way to be able to update and give, quick messaging on caregiving, dementia navigation. So that's really what the Mama Joe Project is. And it's just you and I talking in safe space, right? You don't have millions of listeners all over the globe, right? Well, they can come on.
Not yet.
Come
Not yet.
on. But the reality is, this is a divine assignment for me.
Yeah.
I literally feel like this is what God wanted me to do, was to share my mother's story.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the ways that, we're doing it. And one of the things that's been amazing is it puts you in almost a place of vulnerability to show your loved one not in their strongest state.
Mm-hmm.
But Adrian, we're not the only ones.
Sure.
Not the only families going through this. So we have to start normalizing conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Removing stigma around caregiving and dementia and cognitive impairment and decline for our loved ones.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. No, this is amazing. Like I said, I'm excited for you, and the doors that are gonna open for you. And I see some major things happening. You haven't shared anything with me, but this is a divine assignment as you share. So I see some big things happening for you, and I'm excited for it. Here's something else I have for you. I was so amazed at the details you captured, before the disease progressed. And I feel from my perspective, it allows your audience to see your mother's personality as well as her value to family and friends, right?
Yeah.
So I want you to let us in on how you captured those shots.
I'm not sure I did such a great job of that, right? And
Really?
what's interesting is, because my mother, Um, and for a little bit of context, is my mother's name was Joanna, right? And so
Okay.
my mother birthed four children, of which
Wow.
I am the only boy and the youngest.
Okay.
But through the process of adoption, I spent most of my years growing up as the middle child with four
Okay.
sisters, all older, four brothers, all younger. And
Mm,
then there were always friends, cousins. I often say not staying a week or the summer, living with us, strangers
yeah.
living with us. So she had
Wow.
this universal mothering spirit
Mm,
um, without discretion of your race,
mm-hmm.
age, sex, religious. She didn't, none of that mattered. She just
Mm-hmm.
loved.
Mm-hmm.
Huge sense of community. Now, mind you, I'm first generation college student. We don't come from any money, but it
Mm-hmm.
seemed like we were always giving away stuff. So my
Sure.
mother was always in them streets in the community, helping people who were struggling on drugs,
Mm-hmm.
running feeding programs, job skills training. You're talking about somebody who would have been diagnosed with a learning disability herself, right?
Mm,
But valued education and now has children with advanced degrees, Ivy League schools. And so this is the
wow.
nature of my mother. She didn't know strangers.
Right.
And she loved big, she loved hard. The other thing I want to point out by my mother, and this point about Mama Joe, is she was doing some international travel, and I think she came back from South Africa, and they've been
Okay.
calling her a Zulu term that pretty much meant Mother Joanna. And so she
Wow.
came back home and said, I want everybody to call me Mama Joe. But here's the reason why. We lived
Mm-hmm.
in a small college town where a lot of the students, particularly black and brown students, would congregate at our homes as a home away from home, right? So she
Sure.
became this great mothering figure. Now imagine this, Adrian. You've been calling my mom, hey mama, for 2.5, 3 years. Now
Mm,
your own mother comes to our town for graduation, looking at you sideways about you calling this other woman mama, and you in the middle. So she figured if everybody called her Mama Joe,
uh-huh.
everybody could receive. Now, how thoughtful is, but that's who my mother was. Just a
Wow.
selfless person who was always about giving. Never saw my mother hardly eat a double cheeseburger. She was active. She
Mm,
was a non-drinker, a
mm,
non-smoker. So never in 1,000 years would you think my
mm.
mother would be someone who would have a chronic illness, let
Right.
alone something debilitating like Alzheimer's and dementia.
Sure.
My mother is someone who would have won awards from multiple governors, been received at the White House. So again, this is big personality in our little world. Yeah, she was our Mother Teresa, right?
Right.
You just never, but it can happen to any of us.
Right. Right. And you just spoke volumes. Like, we have all these different preventative, I would say, preventative healthy habits that we speak about in, protecting our brain and brain health and decreasing the chances of, developing a chronic disease like Alzheimer's or dementia. You said she didn't drink, didn't smoke, ate healthy, lived an active lifestyle. So it speaks to how, like you said, this disease can impact anyone, no matter how healthy your lifestyle is, right?
Right.
And I want to know, I know you said those were hard or difficult shots for you to capture, but are there any other shots that you could think, like, were there any other parts of making the film that were difficult for you that maybe you didn't capture on film, but it was, could have been like some challenges somewhere?
Um, actually, that was the actually was the major challenge for me, and so I appreciate what you're saying because that means to me you still were able to catch the essence of who she was.
Right.
Toward the latter part of, my mother's no longer with us. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, here on the earth, right?
Right.
But one of the things that was interesting was the last couple of years of our lives. Spent a great time of it with very limited mobility
Mm-hmm.
and language, and so we literally had to tell the story for her that she couldn't tell herself.
Mm-hmm.
But the record told it. So you heard from people that she helped, people that,
Mm-hmm.
she was her other mother too. You saw it from the newspaper articles. So, but one of the things for me was the actual images that we were catching with the camera was
Mm-hmm.
all with her in her dementia state.
Mm.
And I wish I would have had the chance to have, 6K footage of my mom and her beauty and strength. So that was the big kind of that was one of the one things that made me sad at some
Okay.
point in the project. But
Okay.
again, the fact that she has these seeds, these fruits of where she was helpful, I think who she is still kind of comes out. So
Right. And it did. And like I said, like, to me, I guess watching the progression from, the shots that you were able to capture, I would not have known from some of those beginning shots that maybe she had already been diagnosed with dementia. So, but I could already see that personality coming out to me. She was like, my neighborhood grandmother, one of my grandmother's friends that's lived in the neighborhood for years, and, our surrogate grandmother, our auntie down the street. So you
yeah.
did a wonderful job in that. And I want to ask you about the title. It's the Mama Joe Project.
Mhm.
Hope and help. So
Yes.
elaborate on the hope and help part.
So as you know, there's no known cure for Alzheimer's.
Sure.
So sometimes we say, well, then why? I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
die from something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it does not have to be this, right?
Right.
And even though we can talk about lifestyle modifications to reduce our risk, that may not guarantee it. I look at
Mm-hmm.
this, I'm an educator. I look at it the
Okay.
same way with education. I know plenty of PhDs who are out of work, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't guarantee you a job in your field, education.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take my chances with it though, right? Because it
Right.
increases my odds, right? With it,
Right.
I look at the same way with risk reduction measures.
Right.
I'm fighting to live. I want to live, and
Right.
we don't have to succumb to some things. So let's adjust our diet so we don't have hypertension, right? Uh,
Right.
Inflammation, down. Resting. That's one of the things that we found out that our mother was a night owl. Well, we have always
Mm-hmm.
known our mother was a night owl, but we didn't realize that the impact that lack of rest can have on the brain,
Sure.
right? So we talk about hope and help because we bring in fact, the last segment of our film is
Mm-hmm.
about tips to help, right? So we bring
Mm-hmm.
in scholars and researchers who talk about developments within the field, right?
Mm-hmm.
Disease modifying therapies that are drug based, and then
Mm-hmm.
some therapies and treatments that are not drug based, right? We
Sure.
we talk about because one of the things with my family and my sister Joy out of Houston, Texas, was my mother's primary caregiver.
Right.
And one of the issues was just not being connected to information and resources, right?
Right.
And when you're in the trenches providing care for your loved one, and that
Mm-hmm.
person on the other end doesn't answer the phone, or that
Mm-hmm.
service doesn't understand your cultural context,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have time to try to teach them. You got to
Right.
teach the mama, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where the hope and the hope for us comes into the fact. Well, we always have a larger hope, right? But
Mm-hmm.
the hope in this context comes into the fact that there is help.
Mm-hmm.
You're not alone in this. And so
Good.
one of the things I've discovered along with this is it's not that there aren't resources.
Okay.
They're not aggregated in a certain way, Adrienne, where they're easy to access,
Mm.
particularly for those communities who may need them most.
Right.
And that's what I hope that the Mama Joe Project is really doing, highlighting that information and that resources so that people can be connected with. And so that's where the hope is, that there is help out there. Now let's get you attached to that help.
Good. Good. Good stuff. And, speaking in terms of the caregiving journey, as a family, I know it was very difficult, watching your mother live with this disease and watching someone you love, watching your mother slowly disintegrate, right? I have cousins right now that, have a mother who's diagnosed with dementia, and it's 10 of them, similar to your family. So they're navigating this from my perspective, from the outside looking in, they navigate extremely well. But I want you to tell us about, your family. How were you all able to cope with this logistically as well as emotionally and spiritually?
So for me, not very well until
Okay.
close to the end. Okay.
Okay.
So my sister Joy, now I don't remember, I'm known for having the best recall in the family. I can remember things
Okay.
from when I was 2, right?
Okay.
But I don't remember this, but all the other family signs off on this one. Joy was about 7 or 8. She was always saying that when I get grown, I want my parents to come live with me.
Mm.
Even before my mother's diagnosis, my parents were living in North Carolina with my sister. And then
Mm-hmm.
that's when she started exhibiting some signs, moved to Texas, ended up getting, the diagnosis there. But this,
Mm-hmm.
I need for the audience to hear me clearly. Before things ever got too deep,
Mm-hmm.
Joy was officially assigned. Now, my father is with us. Okay.
Okay.
I have, as you know, we got 10 other siblings.
Right.
Joy was assigned the power of attorney.
Mm.
That's critically important. So
Mm-hmm.
my opinion matters, but now when it comes to mom's health decisions, so there was a
Right.
clear boss on that. So that kept down
Mm-hmm.
confusion. So
Mm-hmm.
now what role do you play? I
Mm-hmm.
have a sister who's trained as a controller in data and analytics.
Mm-hmm.
She can manage mom's budget from afar, out of state, right? Another
Sure.
was a teacher and an educator, so would come and find. So we all had to find a role, that we played. Like I said,
Sure.
early on, I had my head in the sand. It was hard to see my mom in that condition, but that's
Mm-hmm.
that's no excuse. But
Mm-hmm.
toward the end, we all kind of find our way. But you gotta have communication, Adrian.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta find ways how to have unemotional conversations. That's about the good of the
Mm.
person you're caring for
Mm-hmm.
and for the care team.
Unemotional.
Unemotional. That's right.
Wow.
We don't have time to be petty with each other. Well, you had mama for 5 weeks now. You can't handle them. you know?
Right. Right.
Yeah, you have watch your cat. How you gonna watch it? So having those type of open discussions, because there is a role that everyone can play, but the focus has to be what the focus is. What do y'all say? Keep the main thing the main thing.
Keep the main thing the main thing. Wow, good stuff. And I'm that resonates with me when you talk about unemotional discussions because I'm a person that's big on emotional intelligence.
Uh-huh.
And so, adding that piece, I'm taking that as a piece of advice that you would give families
Yeah.
experiencing this same journey. But do you have another nugget in there that you're like, oh, if you have to have the power of attorney, you got to have your documents in place. We have to have these unemotional discussions. Is there something else that, oh, look, we'd have to dig deep for this one that you
Listen,
can share?
listen, and we're doing these events all across the country, and
Sure.
it pains me because I have to do this everyone we go to because I know we're not
Mm-hmm.
the only family. And so I'll
Mm-hmm.
ask, any of you have them one or two in your family who won't carry their weight or their load? Everybody starts shaking their head. And I have
Mm-hmm.
to raise my hand and say I was one of them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so what happened for me was it was a friend who had lost and a mother actually here in Atlanta, right? And he
Mm-hmm.
said, Herb, have you checked on your sisters? I was
Mm-hmm.
saying my sisters are, they're outspoken. Trust me, if they had a problem, they would let me know. And he said, I know you send your check down there, but you may want to have a talk with your sisters. Adrian,
Mm-hmm.
when I discussed with my sisters,
Mm-hmm.
they were not happy with me. And
Mm.
here's a couple of things. I would call and check on my father, but never ask my two sisters how they were doing as the caregiver,
Wow.
right? The other thing was my sister, these are small things. My
Mm-hmm.
sister was pretty upset because when she was seeing group chain sibling text messages about, hey, mom went to the hospital today. This was the report from the neurologist or whatever. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I would look at it, but what I'm going to do? I'm thousands of
Right.
miles away, other than my prayers, I'm helpless, right?
Right.
It said to them when I didn't like those messages or put the smiley face on, Herb's not in the fight with us,
Mm.
right? And one of the things
Hmm.
I committed to do, because those were simple things.
Yeah.
It needed me. And here's
Yeah.
the problem. And I can say, well, man, it's too hard for me to see, mom, I'm a tough macho dude. I can't. Well, if I'm saying that and I'm not there to carry my weight, what does that mean for my nearly 80-year-old father?
Yeah.
For my nephews, the people we
Mm-hmm.
say we love, an extra burden is on them because I'm back in Illinois being a coward.
Yeah.
But what I can say is once we had those discussions, I got
Mm-hmm.
it right.
Mm.
And I committed to being in Houston at least once a quarter physically.
Mm-hmm.
My mom used to enjoy seeing me dance around and act silly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't realize not only did that bring a smile to my mother, but it changed the environment of the house and made things more light for my father, for my sisters, for
Mm-hmm.
my nephews, because Uncle Herb's in town, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't think about some of these things, which is why, again, you got to have what? Unemotional conversations.
Discussion.
Now, that conversation was emotional, man. They
Yeah.
was getting on me, but I
Yeah.
had at least enough in me to understand they were hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to say, I'm sorry. And my
Yeah.
behaviors had to change. And so that's a nugget that I don't like, having to be the bad. And what's funny is when I'm in these events sometimes, Adrian, and there'll be some of the older sisters
Uh-huh.
in there, and I have to make that confession. They
Uh-huh.
be like, "No, Dr. Caldwell, not you." I'd be like, "Yes, ma'am, it was me." They don't believe it. You know, I got my little suit, I look all composed, but no.
Right.
And it wasn't intentional,
Yeah.
but there's
Understandable.
sacrifice involved in this.
Hmm. I like what you said about, a change of behavior, because some people can say, I'm sorry, I apologize, I'm being transparent, I didn't show up, and the behavior doesn't change. So listen, I'm applying the hats off, to that. That's big, but what a friend that you have to say, hey, did you check on your sisters?
Yes.
Yeah, they might be strong, but some of the strongest people, and I'm gonna share this interview with a friend of mine who's in coping right now, who's a caregiver for her mother. And sometimes this conversation comes up about, just being, it's like you down in the trenches by yourself. You're a strong person, but the strong people need help too. So,
Listen, strong people need strong people.
yep. Mm-hmm.
And it may not be one to one. So it might
Right.
be, Joy is so strong, it might be the seven of us rallying together to equal her strength, to give her
Yeah.
a break, right?
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
my thing is, there's 11 of us. What about those who don't have those that many siblings?
Yeah.
Right? So we have to find, additional ways to come and find, community. So there is no excuse, Adrian, especially for those of us who have multiple members to our family. We got to figure this thing
Absolutely.
out.
Absolutely. And I'm going to say this last tidbit here because it may resonate with someone. But, it's always kind of presumed that the sibling or the person in the family that may not be married, may not have children, or has all this time on their hands, like they should be the ones assigned to be the primary caregiver because you don't have a family to take care of. And sometimes that is not always true. It's not that you pile on more on this person. Remember, they are alone, So, yeah, I wanted to throw that in there because sometimes that happens.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
That happens. But moving on, this was a wonderful film. You are on tour, you're everywhere making great connections and partnerships. And I have to ask, is it a part two? Is it something else brewing? Please share with us.
So there are some things brewing, and the
Hmm.
reason it is because there's a lot of stories that are out there. That's what
Hmm.
we're doing. We're storytelling to get to this other
Hmm.
end. There's
Hmm.
there's other stories that I want to capture. That's why I like that we have again these pieces that we call multimedia modules, right? Because one of the things I'm working on is the faces of caregiving,
Mm.
right? Because those profiles will look different for a single person, right? Versus a person. What about a person with maybe the sandwich generation caregiver,
Yeah.
right? The spouse caregiver,
Yeah.
like it was in my family, the youth caregiver,
Yes.
right? And so there's various. I mean, do you have just one CD or one song in your Rolodex? Oh, I said CD. I'm showing my age, right? Y'all don't use
It's
that.
okay. I'm familiar. So we showing our age
Y'all
together.
got Spotify and all these, streaming services and things like. Well, whatever your music library is, you have more than one, right? And
Right.
I feel the same way as related to storytelling. So here's the other thing. If I interviewed you, Adrian, for the documentary film and you showed up 40 seconds on that, well,
Hmm.
I still have 19 other minutes of brilliance that I interviewed with you for, right? So just
Sure.
finding ways to use some of the material we already have, as
Yeah.
well as capture fresh footage along the way. This past week, we did this amazing opportunity down in Alabama at the Rosa Parks Museum. I took
Hmm.
cameras with me, right? I'm in Jackson, Mississippi this week. I have cameras with me because there's always a story,
Yep.
to capture. Shoot, upset I didn't have cameras with me when I was in Atlanta, at the Carter Center. But I had a videographer there, so I got some footage from there.
You
But
got some footage.
so listen, when I came around that corner, and mind you, we filmed there. But when I came
Hmm.
into that auditorium that night, it was empty, and I don't even know what they were showing me, maybe a mic test. But I
Hmm.
walked into that space, and I saw the insignias for the Carter Center, and saw my mama's picture up there on the.
Mm. Oh,
I just
wow.
just froze, and so I get
Yeah.
a lot of that monthly. Just amazing spaces, amazing people we get to share the story with, but also You mentioned it when you asked the question about the title. It's about providing the help. So it's more than just telling them. And you've seen the piece. This was not meant to be a sad piece, right?
No.
You
Mm-mm.
know, it's meant to be a piece to tell a story, but also help you connect to what's going to work for your family and in your household.
Sure. And the amazing part is, aside from it just being an amazing, film, a passionate film at that, is how, after, your mother passed away, you still have footage.
Yeah,
And, I remember the showing of you all taking the family vacation.
yeah,
And that speaks volumes because it didn't end right there.
yeah,
And to me, I interpreted that as there's still life after.
yeah,
Mama Joe is still living. She's living through film. She's living through you all as you all tell the stories. Like she's still here, just not in bodily form. And so just to see that life after piece, it put a glimmer, of hope. And especially for me, I'm a crybaby. I didn't cry, but I'm a crybaby.
what? Okay.
I did not cry because I had to hold. Let me tell you, I'm the type of crier that somebody would have to usher me out.
Oh Lord.
I don't. I lose my breath like a child's cry when they get a whooping, but I held it together.
Quick story, Adrian. So my sister is like that. I gave my sister the opportunity to screen the film in advance before we ever took it to the theater. One sister declined. We got to our very first event. We're at this
Hmm.
full movie theater, right, in
Hmm.
Alton, Illinois, which is where my
Hmm.
parents are both from. And as you know, the film starts with my mom on camera singing,
Mm.
and she's kind of swinging her arms, and
Hmm.
all you hear is this yelping throughout the theater. And my
Oh,
sisters, they're contagious. So once one starts,
it's a domino effect.
I said, that's why I said you can come watch it earlier. She said it was cool, but I didn't. It was the familiarity of my mom's movement
Yeah.
that kind of calmed. So the fact that you said you're a crier that they have to escort out, yeah, you can be part of our family for sure.
Okay. That resonates with me. Thank you. I want you to share with everyone how can they catch the Mama Joe Project? Can they schedule with you special screenings? With Altar, I know some of our churches they have been interested in showing it for their congregations. How can people do that?
So we love partnering with universities. We love partnering with churches because the data is clear. There is still power
Sure.
in terms of information distribution in our Black churches. And so
Sure.
this is a film and a project, Adrian, that's for everyone, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you certainly can visit our website, which is mamajoeproject.com.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we do a poor job of keeping it updated but that's because we're a small team and we're on the road quite a bit these
All right.
days, right? I can be reached at as well. I can be reached if you email info@mamajoeproject.com. It'll eventually get to me, right? And
Okay.
we're certainly open to discussion on partnering to have these outreach events. If you just
Mm-hmm.
want to watch the film, it is streaming nationwide at pbs.org on the PBS app. Just put in My Mama Joe and it'll get there. But I got to tell you, it's a much different experience when you see it in a movie theater with a bunch of
Sure.
other people and you get to have conversation afterwards. So
Sure. Thank you for that. Listen, you all, we have had a wonderful conversation with Dr. Herb Caldwell today, the creator, the producer, director, everything behind the Mama Joe Project. You have to go to the website. Give the website one more time.
mamajoeproject.com.
MamaJoeProject.com. Look this up. Find out what city that it is showing. If it's not near you, it's worth the travel. So get your tickets. Listen, continue to tune in to me every Thursday morning at 10 on WIGO 1570 Atlanta's Pace Setter. And y'all stay safe out there. All right, we will talk to you later.